Welcome, everybody. This is Sara Kolata, and I am an architect and an organizer of the Disrupt Symposium, a 5-day virtual event dedicated to the topic of business of architecture. The first edition of Disrupt will take place 1st to the 5th of May at 7 p.m. Central European Time, and will welcome to stage C-level leaders, partners, directors, and founders of practices such as UN Studio, SOM, Big, Sonetta, Safdie Architects, Zaha Architects, Gensler, Perkins and Will, Woods Bagot, Arab, to name just a few. The event is sponsored by Graphisoft, creator of ArchiCAD, Chaos, creator of V-Ray, TuneArch, Z by HP, Teradisi, and an IE School of Architecture and Design. To check the full speaker lineup and purchase your tickets, go to www.disruptsymposium.com. So today we gathered for a 1-hour roundtable discussion dedicated to the topic of the metaverse and the NFT opportunities for architects. Digital realms quickly become more and more real as people adapt blockchain technology for finance and the creation of trust-based ledgers that remove the middleman and enable for a decentralized exchange between individuals. These ideas stand for a new system, different from the one that we know and that we are familiar with. Today, we gather here with key industry experts to discuss the exact benefits blockchain technology holds for architects and ways in which you can profit from them by being an early adopter. So we are joined by Patrik Schumacher, principal of Zaha Architects, who is widely recognized as one of the most prominent thought leaders within the fields of architecture, urbanism, and design. His research interest focuses on designing and simulating real and virtual environments and their fusion, with the goal to increase the power to facilitate productive communicative interactions. We're also being joined by Krista Kim, founder of the Techtism movement and the Metaverse builder. She created the Mars House, the first metaverse home, sold as the first NFT in history in March 2021. The piece received a global acclaim and was the highest grossing sale of the NFT on Super Rare. And lastly, we have Joanna Popper, an award-winning Hollywood and Silicon Valley media executive with a track record of launching cutting-edge content and technology to drive revenue, audience engagement, and brand love. She currently leads HP's initiatives for go-to-market and content partnerships for virtual reality. So let's start. Patrik, I will start with a question to you. Zaha Hadid Architects is at the forefront of innovation, showing us exactly how to utilize Web3 and its socioeconomic opportunities for architects globally. Can you tell us more about the metaverse and opportunities you identified as an architect and practice owner?
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. Interesting topic to discuss, and also I'm looking forward to symposium later. Well, I think it's a massive business opportunity for all designers, in particular architects. I think there's going to be an absolute avalanche of requirements, and I see it already coming on, because I believe that everybody who is now, every organization, whether commercial, profit for non-profit, museums, all sorts of cultural institutions, they will all have virtual venues to parallel their physical venues. And the last 2 years saw that happening. We had a number of shows, for instance, in Shanghai, Hong Kong, that were, fully visualized in 3D and then also experienceable as a VR experience, because the access to the physical space was limited. But it's now becoming a non-brainer that this should anyway happen, even if you have physical access. So we opened and closed a Hong Kong show with no physical visitor, but everything is been, neatly photographed and then converted into 3D version. But we have seen it with so many clients coming forward, and it's going to be this avalanche where literally everybody who has a website will have a virtual 3D spatial site, and the immersive web is coming along, and it connects up with Web3 because at the same time, coincidentally, we have that whole crypto ecosystem exploding. and the Internet of Value made possible by that in a decentralized and trustless way, and in a very free and open way where it's permissionless and everybody can start doing things. And there's this new domain of innovation, and so the metaverse has been married to the crypto universe. It's very quite congenial, and we also ourselves, we're developing various projects for various metaverses, but we also have our own small niche metaverse, the Liberland metaverse, where we also participating as partners and becoming joining that startup company. And again, with respect to funding route, and also with respect to later running of such an entity, I think we believe in these must be relatively open platforms, and they're maybe better as non-corporate. We're also working on confidentially on a much larger metaverse, where there also that route is taken ultimately into a DAO, into a more distributed form of ownership. And so I think this has been a very happy marriage, and it's thrilling. And what I've been observing the crypto ecosystem for a number of years, and it's been amazing, the creativity. And now that overlaps into these kind of immersive web technologies, I really think it's exciting. But architects have to brace themselves, because the amount of work which is coming along is more than we can cope with for everybody.
That's so interesting. And in fact, being an architect myself, I'm wondering, and I think that's on a lot of people's minds, is do you think that we will somehow compromise who we are as architects, that we build for the physical place, and also have to have that engineering ability to actually bring those projects in physical places to real life? Do you think that by moving into the digital realm, we will compromise? Or is there something like a new role that can emerge for us?
Well, we already had basically the whole engineering stack is already no longer a responsibility with respect to structural engineering, M&E, environmental engineering, etc., etc., etc. So we are in charge of what I call social functionality, the interaction configuration of spaces as communications of bringing people together into domains of interaction, and that is one-to-one translatable. So the whole engineering stack is substituted with a new set of engineering, which is more to do with polygon counts and frame rate refreshments. And there, similarly, the complexity of architecture has also challenges in this domain, but the design itself is very, very seamless, I think, because we are ultimately about designing those interfaces of communication. We're designing these final surfaces which bring for navigation, orientation, for configuring event scenarios. Ultimately, we're the kind of UX UI designers of the built environment, and that metaphor is very strong, because it is what in the web design, particularly, you also have this distinction between the designers who are designing originally graphic designers and interaction designers, and the engineers, the coders and engineers on the back, where this basically operating was under the hood. With this distinction, the design is absolutely seamless. And it is our core competency to structure these, what I call the phenomenological project, the semiological project, or the organizational project, and then finally the dramaturgical project. These are aspects of a design project which are seamless between the two worlds. And I think it's important that also a lot of the clients will be both looking for renewing or upgrading or expanding their physical premises, and they want these to be seamlessly integrated with their virtual premises, so that you have the same sense of identity, character, atmosphere, that there's degrees of seamlessness. And also, I think we will experience these virtual spaces, not all from home with goggles, but within spaces, within physically designed spaces. So that's why I think the architects, there will be degree of specialization, there will be a new crop of virtual-only architects, but there's definitely a very strong, I think, business case and case with respect to competency and client portfolio for architectural firms to address both of these realms simultaneously, and that's the way we want to strategize.
This is fabulous. I love how you say that it's not just going to be something that is going to be experienced digitally alone, but can be merged with physical. And I think that that really opens a great new level of experiences of places, especially even with like collaboration with clients. If we can bring in clients into maybe an unbuilt yet entity and give them that experience, and for them to envision how it will look through VR glasses. That's also a great
Well,
addition.
we've done that for a long time, but now the thing is you can actually put it online, make it accessible. It becomes part of the sales effort of the PR, but it also has a life, continuous life, in parallel with the real building, and that could be expansion, not necessarily be a replica only. And I foresee, there's already these technologies when you go into buildings, you're going to have panoramic screens. Some spaces will be mainly interfaced into virtual spaces. Others will have less screens and projections and holographics and be more physically oriented. There will be a spectrum from more physically foregrounding the co-location of physically present people and how interaction to those spaces which are nearly only interfaces into other spaces. So I've done some research with students, some interesting projects where you have that gradient from something nearly 100% physical all the way to nearly cave-like structures, which are embedded and interspersed into the physical space. I think that's for corporates in particular. I'm thinking about is in co-location, co-working spaces, but also exhibition spaces. And we have already clients who buying into this, and where the exhibition spaces, for instance, they will run both physically and virtually. But the interesting thing is the virtual can come 2-3 years ahead of time, and therefore be a good promoter for the physical asset to become through. I think there will be a big influence from metaverse design into physical building eventually. So now the analogy runs from the built environment, from built architectures and cities into the metaverse, and I think that flow of inspiration will also flow in the other directions very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I have a question here. I'm not going to read the whole one, but it basically relates to how can you become an early adopter as an interior designer or an architect and create the new words within the metaverse?
Well, it's so quick and easy now to throw up things and throw them onto the internet and let people experience this and use these spaces. I've seen literally hundreds of startup companies in the space. I'm more looking at business types of metaverses. So conference facilities, co-working facilities, trade shows and things like that. But also, of course, all these chat rooms and social networking spaces. So you can spin that up quite quickly and easily. And what I see, the younger generation, the younger colleagues who might find it hard to compete, to build up the track record for having major buildings kind of commissioned to them, they can be much quicker. I think there's a huge chance for the next generation of architects who would have to wait and slave up the ladder for 15 years to be now coming to the forefront. So I see it already happening with my students.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it is really a great opportunity for people to just rise up from sort of the ground and build themselves in that also as architects. I'm curious, you mentioned the business possibilities. Do you think that there will be possibilities as well? Because I'm guessing within all these spaces, there is rental, there is sale, there is such a thing as being a developer almost of these architectures for the new economy in the metaverse. Is this something that you guys are interested in, or do you perceive that to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's happening left, right, and center. So of course there's the designers, and they can work for fees. Or some of even our staff, they've left the company. They're already spinning their artworks. But I think there's also some of the developers came to us. They have that expertise will also exist in the metaverse, because if you have these land sales, and final end user organizations don't necessarily know how to utilize that, so that in between of a developer is very positive. Thinking through the downstream leasing opportunities or rentals, and also hiring architects and designers and managing that. I'm thinking, talking, not these kind of self-made quick things you find on small sites in decentralized. I'm talking about major, larger, high-value operations. For that, the developers are coming in, and I'm talking to a number of developers, real estate developers, who are coming into virtual real estate, and they see precisely that role between the let's say the metaverse platform providing the space, the end user who wants event scenarios unfold, the developer comes right there as an entrepreneur in the middle. That's happening already. And we personally as well, we're just designers for fees, but in the Liberland project, we're more entrepreneurial. So we're becoming part of actually platform creators and developers.
That's excellent. Yes, I think that this whole ecosystem definitely gives more opportunities to artists, also to share profits through NFTs and things like that. But we have a very interesting question here. How would pricing be done for opportunities in the metaverse? Does it translate from the real life?
Well, I mean, of course, there's this element of the artwork where you really have a severing off of price development from underlying cost. That's not so much our world, although we also exploring that through auction houses, etc. I can't talk more right now. There's been an amazing explosion, of course, of the art space, and there you have a very, very loose connection. It's really very, very open and intuitive. With the world which we are more inhabiting, it is actually you cost the project, and if you have a more complex entity to design with lots of social functionality and technical functionality, you really have to make a resource and project plan. And it's very similar to what you need for the architectural design. As I said, there's a different engineering stack, but there is an engineering stack, and the carefully modeling and developing. So you have your usual budgeting of cost, and then you obviously on the revenue side you have to think of the client, the value which you bring to clients, and the rentals are comparable. I mean, if corporates renting out a beautiful space for 4 hours in the afternoon, these are substantial figures, or for a whole weekend, and then longer leases. So it's very similar. Basically, you can orient relative to what the real physical real estate would be. I mean, it is the production is somewhat less, but you have land cost. You do have production cost, and maybe so the figures there. I mean, I can't generalize. I know some figures which are very similar to what you would pay for a physical venue. What you pay for a digital venue is very similar. It's quite curious. And because on the other hand, you have the corporates maybe they have more projection for the events. They can invite their global audiences. For instance, I mean, if the technology develops, so we are working with a fantastic technology company. We're talking literally thousands of high fidelity presencing and sharing of large crowd experiences. If you can deliver that, then this is also worth a lot of money, but it's also a cost element. So the cost element and the revenue streams are similar there to what we find in our kind of brick and mortar world. It's comparable. It's anyway an orienting condition. But when you talk to art, I mean, you have to ask Christy. I mean, I don't know how that can be priced. I don't think it can.
Actually, I think that it would be really interesting, Krista, to hear from you, because not only that you're massively invested in this topic, both metaverse, the Web3 decentralization as a concept as well, but also with selling the Mars house and being an artist yourself, you have an understanding of this intricacies of rental and sale. So let's maybe start by better understanding the context within you launched and sold the Mars house first, and moving on to how that impacted your career.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say that I agree with everything that Patrik has mentioned, and that we are very, very early. We're seriously at the cutting edge. We are building the plane as we fly it, if you will. The platforms that we're speaking of, the first generation metaverse platforms are the gaming platforms. Sandbox, Decentraland, Somnium Space. They're truly built toward children's gaming. Okay, but the next generation of metaverse platforms are high fidelity. And everybody is going there. The technology is rapidly accelerating in its development to bring about a future, a very near future, where we will have digital experiences and a digital overlay of architecture and art that is nearly indistinguishable from real life. Okay, that's where we're going. And so we're in the middle ground right now. We're still an ugly teenager developing into an awkward teenager. Okay? So when you think about the Mars house, I think the reason why it was such a controversial project was because it was the first real estate or house that was monetized as an NFT and sold on the art market. And it is truly the intersection between architecture and art and real estate because it is the first property that is truly meant to be a metaverse experience and a metaverse property. Owned by an owner, you can build it on Decentraland, you can build it on whatever platform you wish. Currently, it is built on Spatial.io. And Spatial.io is a Unity-based more high fidelity platform that I'm partnered with. And I'm actually partnered with Spatial to create my own metaverse platform. With my partner, Peter Martin, we co-founded this company called The Portal, and it's launching soon. And this is going to be a high fidelity adult metaverse for culturally significant projects to live, right, as immersive experiences. So when you're asking about the opportunity of building in the metaverse, anyone has that opportunity. This is truly going to be the greatest creative renaissance in human history. And we all have an opportunity to co-create and to collaborate because it is Web3, it is decentralized, and anyone can truly participate. Anyone can create architectural installations, post them on OpenSea as NFTs and sell them. But I think in the greater context, the metaverse is not, a traditional land grab or, real estate development project. I think it's an art project. And the reason why I say that is because people want to go to the metaverse to be inspired. They want to be, they want to see beauty. They want to see the sublime. They want to be surprised. It has to be more of an artistically translated project than simply, I think, just commercial. I think the two can live together. I think the two can be intersected with collaboration. The Mars House, and I believe in the future, especially, when more and more people start to come into the metaverse, it will present new ideas, new artistic concepts and philosophies, social structures, political structures, DAOs. There will be new experiments in every aspect of our creative lives and a creative, ingenuity and evolution that will directly influence our real culture, our real life. So the metaverse is truly a transcendent space. It is a space with no rules. It is a carte blanche. It is a place, it's a blank canvas, and anything can happen there. You defy the laws of physics, but you also transcend all of the divisions, whether they're cultural or historic, political, all these divides that have existed for thousands of years of human civilization are now transcended. And you will see that younger generations, I learned a lot about the metaverse from my teenagers, incidentally. They're 14 and 12. And, during the COVID crisis, we were in lockdown in Toronto in our condo, and I observed that their entire social engagement was on Roblox. And I had learned about Roblox during this time, and I saw the phenomenon of how they would gather with their friends and co-create. They would create games. They would be first protagonist creators and collaborating with their friends. And this would become a general practice that everyone would participate in. It's a new cultural phenomenon. Future generations are very involved in creation, and they love to be involved in the communities that they create around brands, around whatever interests that bring them together. And so when we think about creating in the metaverse, every brand, every artist, every organization is now a community. So the idea of building in the metaverse is a community focused endeavor. And it's also very collaborative and co-creative. So that also has to be taken into account. The Mars house itself, and I love that we're talking about the Mars house. I'm actually going to build the physical Mars house. So I love that Patrik has actually brought up this point that the metaverse can be a place where we can actually gain inspiration to build in the real world. And indeed, that will happen and is happening. So I think that our architecture in our real world will become more and more phantasmic, more and more, more and more imaginative, more authentic, more different. So many. I know that Zaha Hadid architects have always been at the forefront of pushing the envelope between aesthetics and engineering, and creating spaces that are so artistic and out of this world. It's truly sci-fi, truly futuristic and visionary. But I mean, you're going to see much more of that, which is what we'd love to see. Right. So I'm inspired by the metaverse, and I see a great opportunity for all creators.
I love it how you spoke about that sort of aspect of how quickly your children adapt to that. And I think that I really certainly see that with younger generations, that almost this younger generations are born to adapt this technology easier, and they want that. Whilst we perhaps differently educated from a different backgrounds, we look at it and we sometimes see this as maybe it's like a craze. A lot of times I heard people say, oh, the metaverse will come and go. But I'm afraid it might be like with the internet, where, at the beginning we were just like waiting for the page to load so long. And then, we're not so long after that. And it's evolved to really a true sense of community. And also to speak to that element of how real that is. We saw that already in the last 10 years, what happened within the finance world, with crypto. And it is so real. I mean, people really made tremendous amounts of money, and it created new opportunities for people that perhaps would never happen in the physical, not on that scale. And so it really shows to prove that technology is changing the way that we see reality, and it's bringing these opportunities. And whether you want to be an adapter of it or at the beginning, or you will be staying behind and watching it evolve, one day you surely will open that Facebook account on the metaverse, or the equivalent of it, because when those platforms emerged, not everyone jumped on it, but eventually it becomes something that everyone has.
But if you want longevity, I believe that you really have to think about the metaverse as a community engagement project. What is it that will inspire them? What is the ethos of the place, the purpose of the place, and how can you bring them back, and how can they actually activate it themselves? So why don't you open up for the community to also offer, services in beautiful spaces that they rent and they provide? This experience economy is truly going to be the backbone of the metaverse economy, I believe.
Absolutely. And speaking to these opportunities, how does it look like today if someone wanted to create a building in the metaverse? Do you just choose a platform, create a building, and see what happens? Do you need to list it? Do you need to find a client first? And if you wanted to find a client, where would you go to find one?
Patrik.
Well, I mean, of course, there are these metaverses where like Decentraland, you have relatively small plots. They were affordable at one point, and you have in-world builders, so you have environments where you can put things together. This is this kind of self-creation or participatory making from individuals can do it. I think it's a great inspiration. Yes, there's much more opportunity for creatives. Everybody can be creator and maker much easier than in the real physical world, where you have so many more barriers and issues. Health and safety is one of them, and and you can be self-creating in small teams. So I can see people, and to learn these software packages and learn, to bring things into the Unreal Engine and then upload them. I mean, you have certain constraints. Each metaverse has a particular technical constraints. They also have, to some degree, some moderation, which is more than just a technical check, whether these, so you have to place things. If you place things, they have to be operational. They have to be able to be light-footed enough to load up. And there's additional moderation. So it's not a total free-for-all. Although I think I can imagine that different sites have different degrees of freedom. And I think it's true. So just to get started is quite easy and quick. You don't need a client. You can become your own entrepreneur and developer and designer. But when it comes to young architects, how would they find clients? I think it's different. It's easier than in the real world, that's for sure, because you can spin up some portfolio. You can create a website which attracts, and the threshold is lower, the costs are lower, and you don't have. It feels a bit to me that new space of opportunity, a bit like China. When China opened up, they weren't aware with what people's track records were. So we were a very kind of green and young, relatively young firm, and we were well known on a number of in various ways, but that didn't help us in Europe or the US to get jobs. But in China, it was the world of opportunity. So here again, that lower threshold, and actually this younger generation is much more digitally savvy than the older architects. So I think there's enormous opportunity. I mean, we don't have to search for clients. I mean, we have so many, and literally every week we get new requests for metaverse things to do. So more than we can cope with. So I don't know if but in today's world, I mean, if you have Facebook and Instagram and all these, it's all very similar. Sometimes you can. Some of your creations become viral, and you bypass a whole lineup of supposedly famous architects, and you jump ahead of the queue. So that's the world we're now entering, and I find it exciting.
Yeah, it certainly is.
And some of the big platforms are people working in and around the metaverse. They gather on the front that are sort of the Web 2 platforms, like Discord, Twitter Spaces. You can find lots of people working in and around these and create communities and develop relationships that they can then take offline and create lots of opportunities as well as relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you mentioned platforms where people gather, and I'm getting quite a lot of these questions about what softwares to use or get accustomed to in order to start designing for the metaverse.
So right now, I would say that the two software that should be focused on are Unity and Unreal Engine. But there are pros and cons to both. I believe in a high fidelity metaverse. So I'm only going to promote those two software because of longevity, right? So if you want a long-term practice, Unity is definitely one that is a very strong software that allows you to build in the metaverse. Unreal Engine is not really Web3 oriented. It is still, highly licensed, highly sort of walled garden with Epic Games, but it provides really beautiful high fidelity outcomes. They have a lot of restrictions in terms of multi-user, because it's quite cost prohibitive to produce a metaverse with multiplayers. You have to pay $3-4 a head per hour on Pixel Streaming, which is their streaming platform, the UI platform to experience the metaverse. It's quite cost prohibitive for large projects, but for personal projects, or if you have your own firm or you want to create your own verse, you're not expecting a lot of people that would be a beautiful showcase of your work. But Unity is more a place where you could expect to have multiplayer experiences in the metaverse. Spatial.io is excellent. And I highly recommend to create on Spatial.io if you can. They curate the creators on the platform. Another platform is Mona.gallery. It's also built on Unity, very beautiful, high fidelity, and creators can create for free and then sell their installations there for a slight percentage for Mona on OpenSea.
Interesting. And is there any way to transfer files or designs from one to another, or they're all different?
No, that's the point. I mean, from speaking for designers, a lot of young designers are brought up on Maya. That's the perfect tool to develop the let's say artwork and what it calls,
assets,
and then bring it into Unity or Unreal for making it ready for interaction and rendering in the VR environment. So you can also work with Grasshopper, but Maya is the best tool the simplest way to then quickly translate. So the designers don't have to directly work in Unity or Unreal. I mean, in terms of our office, we work both with Unity and with Unreal Engine, with my students as well, but the design sketches are first done in Maya and then brought on.
That's amazing. Actually, I wanted to touch on the topic a little bit of the business side, because someone here referred to a question about contracts and transactions that are done on blockchain or digital. What is the benefit of moving your contracts and transactions to the metaverse or the blockchain technology?
I personally believe that property, the incredible opportunities that I think that people will actually have digital twins of their properties, which they will sell as NFTs, as deeds of sale and ownership. And that will be the transaction also. So if you're to sell a house, you buy the NFT, or you sell the NFT, and that's the deed to the house, and that's also the financial transaction. That's what I think will happen.
Mm-hmm. And there's, of course, that element of trust that is embedded into the blockchain contracting that perhaps can be broken easier in the real life contracts. So, Joanna, I wanted to ask a little bit from your perspective, as you are a respected speaker on the topic of XR, the metaverse, digital and immersive experiences. You also lead HP's initiatives for go-to-market and content partnerships for virtual reality. What role does HP have to play in the metaverse, and unravel a little bit the topic of the hardware for the metaverse, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting us here. So it's great to be here with everybody. So my background, I worked at NBC Universal for nearly a decade, and that's where I had my first VR experience more than 8 years ago. And then soon after that, went to work at a tech company in Silicon Valley in 2015, focused on training leaders on the future of technology, such as blockchain, AI, VR, AR, and then have been at HP for a little over 4 years now. So at HP, most people know the company, but for anyone who does not, we were actually founded as the first Silicon Valley company, the first company with 2 founders in a garage in Palo Alto. And if you're ever in Palo Alto, that garage is still there as a historical place. And those founders were creating technology for Walt Disney for the movie Fantasia. And so ever since then, HP has been involved with focusing on inventing and reinventing technology and the future, and creating technology that drives innovation, and helps creators and artists and developers unlock their extraordinary contributions to humanity. And so that's what we are about. In terms of how we see the metaverse, and I would describe it by 4 foundational technology tools, that one of which have already been spoken about. One is this spatial computing, and that's how we will interact with the metaverse. VR and AR are examples of it, but there are other sort of immersive platforms that are examples of it as well. The second building block would be the real-time or gaming engines like Unity and Unreal that were just mentioned, and that's how the content is being built and will be built. Third are virtual worlds, and plenty of virtual worlds have already been mentioned, like spatial, Sandbox and Decentraland and Somnium Spaces, as well as there's all the ones that have existed for a while in VR, like AltSpace and Big Screen and VR Chat. And then there's the blockchain, which is the commerce layer, where NFTs and DeFi and everything will exist. And so we see that these are the 4 foundational technology tools that are building the metaverse. And in terms of the metaverse, just generally, it's a digital disruption on the order of our switch from into the mobile social cloud era, where we're moving entirely from 2D to 3D, and what's interesting, I think, particularly for architects in this moment, is that architects like gamers have been existing in and understanding and living in and working in 3D and spatial already, and so have some tremendous advantages in this moment in the way that they understand the world and work in the world. And so, this sort of fast forward that we've had during this COVID period of taking us to where we are today, I would say, like, we've been thinking about these shifts and these changes as they were coming anyway, and this is where we were heading. But because of where the world has been over the last 2 years, there has been a fast forward in some of the technologies, and as well as the user base's openness to adopting to this new tech in this moment. And so, in terms of how our point of view on how we see this, we believe that it should be, and many of these words were said earlier, but we open, accessible, inclusive, not a walled garden. The product is the product. You are not the product. That's like a really important one for us. It's very community experience, creator, artist, developer focused. So those are some very key beliefs we have at HP. They're certainly not necessarily shared by all businesses, all big technology companies, or sometimes they're shared. They're said, but then actually the business models don't always meet them. So we believe very strongly in the economic models create outcomes, and so it's important that we create economic models that are built on those beliefs and those values. In terms of architecture, we know for even before COVID, over 60% of all large architecture firms were already working in VR and using VR in their pipeline process in some place, and we've worked with tons and tons of we were with Patrik and his company, as well as many other large firms and as well as ISVs and content creators. The Wild, that was just bought by Autodesk, or Trezi out of India, and Thea. We've done some really cool projects, and of course, Roop and Gensler and Autodesk, and we work closely with NVIDIA and Omniverse. Whether it's creating a pipeline for what is this building going to look like? What is the interior design going to look like? We're building a new airport in Boston. Let's design that. Let's figure that out. To creating worlds for people to come together and gather. And so, and from our side, we create technology and we create products that enable you all to do your work better, whether it's more efficiently or, to unlock to spend more time on the important creative side, or to unlock your imagination better, or to help you to create, to learn, to collaborate, to connect, and just create better products. So as far as what our products are, we have today, and of course, many more to come, but we have the HP Reverb G2 headset, which is a collaboration between us and Valve and Microsoft. It's a very, very high resolution, 2160 by 2160 per eye, great audio, really comfortable, really sort of plug and play, connected to a high-end laptop that as an architect, you probably already have to enable your workflow. We also have the HP Reverb G2 Omniscape edition, which adds all that great hardware that I just said, and adds eye tracking, pupillometry, heart rate tracking, and face camera, as well as a software package for cognitive load. And that takes it from just a one-way display to have it be two-way, where you as a content creator, you can see how are people reacting, where are their eyes going, how are they feeling right now? Is their heart rate elevated? Or, what state are they in? Are they in that Goldilocks state of like perfect cognitive load, or are they overwhelmed? Are they bored? And so that's called the HP Reverb G2 Omniscape. It won VR Hardware of the Year last year from the VR Awards, and a lot of other awards actually. And then we're about to win one on Saturday. It's not announced yet, so I'm not going to say what it is, but it's another big one that we're excited about. So that's another one that we've done. We've done backpacks that people have been using. An interesting example in architecture was people were, there was a company looking at building a train, and they were needing to mimic motion. And so they were using the HP Reverb, the HP VR backpacks to do that. And then, outside of, and then we have the Extend XR, which is a software program that helps people scale VR across large scale organizations, which has been a pain point for people. And so that you can actually use, again, it's a cross platform. You can use it with the Pico headsets, and you can use it with the HTC Vive Focus 3. So again, leaning into our mindset of, collaboration, working together with others. And so that one's called Extend XR. We just announced that at Mobile World Congress. And then, of course, we have Edge Compute. We have Hadid that was mentioned earlier, and I think will be part of the symposium. And then we have workstations and many other products that many people are using in the field of architecture. And then, of course, a lot more to come. Those are, I can only talk about what's been publicly announced, but we really see our view as, as I said, is enabling you to create, to do your work in an even better way and help unlock your creativity and tap into what you and your clients and your customers want to build inside the metaverse and across both physical and the digital world. So that phygital overlay. And then there's also lots of really great projects that we've worked on inside of content creation, creating virtual worlds, focused on impact, focusing on healing, such as Brianna's Garden with Lady Phoenix and Sutu, and many others. So I'm excited to work with you all, excited to continue the conversations, and we're really just thrilled to see the focus on the metaverse right now. Sort of that worldwide focus on it, and the power and the shift back into community and back into the power of the artists, and giving artists and developers and creators this wonderful time and this wonderful space to really bring their creations to life.
Yeah, it's indeed a very powerful cooperative experience that we're getting through these softwares and through the connectivity, of the internet and collaboration. It's really great. We have quite an interesting question. It's actually from Jake Krokowski. He's asking, curious to hear about the intersection of NFT and IP copyrights. So when it comes to actually licensing the Mars House, Krista, in your case, if you was to build it in the physical realm, how do the royalties to the creator translate between digital and physical?
That's a great question. So as it stands, the Mars House is owned by AOI, and he owns the Metaverse Mars House. That is his. He owns the home. He owns one version that he can build in his verse, and he's in the middle of doing that. It's being upgraded in Spatial currently, and he will be monetizing on whatever rentals, whatever activations are in the Mars House, which we are going to start activating this year. In terms of the physical Mars House, that is my copyright as the creator of the Mars House. So I'm extending the Mars House into other creative channels, such as the furniture creation physically in Italy with a brand, well-known brand. We're collaborating next year. They'll be launched then. And the physical Mars House will become a retreat, a hotel, if you will, a retreat of wellness and cutting edge technology, which will truly be a very interesting space where the installation itself is healing, and then we have programming for wellness, and it's all interfaced through technology.
This is fascinating. I love how diverse out of a sudden the work became with art the artistry that you do with your work, digital artwork, but then also architecture, digital architecture, furniture design, all of that kind of deriving from that experience of the Mars house. I love that.
Thank you. It's very fun.
It's great.
I think this whole, what you've seen in DeFi, that a lot of the legacy institutional, let's say, patterns and products and contract types getting transferred, and then there is innovation as well on top. This similarly would happen here in terms of the whole world of design, in terms of IP and the various forms of licensing, exclusive, temporary, with royalties, without royalties, permanent, non-exclusive, etc. So there's much more variety than just I buy this NFT and now I own everything, lock, stock, and barrel to do with that. And I'm not sure if I don't think that has been very clear when people purchase NFTs, what this entails and what it doesn't entail. And so similarly with the DAOs and, a DAO like Decentraland, which supposedly is now fully owned by by all the, let's say, coin holders, but there's underneath that, all the IP is proprietary still. And held, for instance, in the foundation or in a corporation. So there will be a lot of small print. You can put that all into smart contracts as well, to some extent, or clarify. And there wasn't a single legal case yet, or not many I haven't heard of. So but I love that a lot of people aren't bothered by this. They just buy in and get into the space, and it's permissionless, and you can, create things, sell things, but at a certain point, particularly as values are increasing, and also as work input into the various assets increase. I mean, if you can, computer generate a lot of these JPEGs, then that's not so important. But if you invest a whole year or a team of 20 into an asset, then you will get more nuanced about. For instance, in the same, I think, with land, when it becomes more valuable, you will have leasing systems rather than outright freehold. So you'll bring in a lot of that, and you can also fractionalize, assets, and have the differentiation of the investor, the developer, the end user. So I think there's going to be, and that's I love about that. So this world will receive a lot of intelligence, and those people who have legacy intelligence, they can do a lot. But I think what we've seen in DeFi as well, there's a lot of innovation on top with unheard of things. Yes. Because in the legacy world, there's a handful of institutions. For instance, there's one typical corporation which has a typical route into becoming maybe a listed public company, and the way these shareholder rules are. And in the world of DeFi, and you have DAOs, you have you replicate some of this, but then you can have thousands of variations. That's what I love. But I think this world will evolve, as I said, and we are already thinking about it carefully. For instance, particular now, let's say you have generated this 3D asset, and now you want to have it in various metaverses. I think that Krista was saying that in this case, the owner has bought the right to have it in several metaverses, but then maybe they have to be adapted, right? So maybe you want to fit it to different site sizes and different degrees of resolution. So is that all included? And so we're thinking about this right now. Actually, there's another startup company where we're thinking about, these parametric adaptiveness. What is an essential genotype? How many phenotypes can you spin off it, and it will still be the same thing? And in the end, what is quite interesting when it comes to the pressure will be harder on it than in the real world, because in the physical world you can't so easily replicate things. And what in the world of architecture, because everything is uniquely tailored, we actually do have copycat things going on, but very rarely, mostly in China, and usually they're not pursued. But so it's more, will tie a bit back more with, let's say, industrial design and products where you can have more of that replication going on. It's a fascinating world. So I would say at the moment, everybody was just enthusiastically buying into, but I'm not sure if they know exactly what they've bought. Because these are, ownership is an intricate bundle of let's say, rights and permissions and things to do with downstream sales is another issue, of course. And a lot of these contracts you get, which is beautiful for the creator. You can get a continuous royalty feeding back with every, in the secondary market, every time this thing is flipped, you get, you could potentially get your
residual cut. Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. And I really I love actually the fact that people are investing like this. It's great because it's somehow moving that economy forward and it's giving it more power. There is quite a relevant question to what you just discussed, Patrik. Maybe we ask Krista. When creating a villa, your Mars house that you've done, I heard that for selling it, we should first buy the land in the metaverse to implant the project in order to sell it. Is that true or not? How does it work with the land ownership?
So when I created the Mars house, at the time, the only metaverse platforms where people were building were on CryptoVoxels, Sandbox, and Decentraland, Somnium Space. And those metaverse platforms require you to purchase land if you're going to build something upon it, right? So it's a very sort of like from the old system into, just duplicated into the metaverse. But in terms of where it is now, I didn't have to pay for land to install the Mars house on spatial.io. So everybody must be aware that not every metaverse is built on a land buying model to build upon. So for example, Mona, which I had mentioned before, is a great place for creatives to begin building whatever they want with very little cost. You're not required to purchase land, which becomes quite prohibitive these days. It's quite competitive, this market. And spatial.io allows you to also create in a very economical manner. So you don't have to purchase, the space, but you rent or you pay a membership, a subscription fee to use the platform. So there are different models, and I would veer more toward, not buying land. I would be very speculative. Like, quite frankly, I think that it's safer just to not invest too much in the first generation, in my opinion, because I don't know how long voxelated graphics is going to remain popular with the market and as it matures. The younger generation will want high fidelity.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I mean, you already see this is volatility, which you see in crypto. You also see in metaverse tokens and NFTs. I mean, NFTs have been actually doing more, behaving more robustly. It's actually when a lot of the other crypto tanked. But I do think it's very early moments. We're in this similar situation like the tech bubble, the .com bubble. 20 years ago, it's over 20 years ago now. I remember it very well. I mean, you had all these fantastic startup companies, vastly overvalued. And if you look at all the metaverses and all the valuations, they can't all succeed. And a lot of them haven't planned enough for the future. There isn't the resource structure to sustain the competitive race. So this is highly risky and these are they're temporarily highly inflated prices, but the thing isn't working yet properly. So it is still highly speculative. So I will really have to be very careful. I think there will be a bit shakeout, and in the end, of course, there will be some very great stable companies and some if you understand the space, but it's still too early. I think I don't think we've seen the final winners in this way. They're yet to come onto the scene.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also would say onto that point, though, it's also important to be experimenting and trying out new things, and at the very least experiencing, having all these different experiences across the board, so that where you want to be investing your time and energy and resources as an individual or as a company.
I mean, I do believe that there is meaning in these network effects will be strong. I don't think it's going to be single space, because there are different, let's say, sub-segments of social reality. There's this entertainment and youth playful thing, and then there's more the business, knowledge economy, and then the educational, but they might plug in. But I do believe there will be a number of quite large metaverses. I call them, meta metropolises. It's a bit like the big cities. You have New York, London, maybe, a few more maybe, but there you have to be in one of them to be part of, to generate these network effects. You have these co-location synergies. I think that will become quite strong, and there will be that shaking out moment. And it's very difficult to predict whether these the winners already in the race, or who might be pulling forward. And I agree very much with Krista, which you mentioned, for instance, crypto voxels. My thing is that the biggest market is not, the early race, the early metaverses who are making a lot of revenue right now, they're all based strongly in the video gaming world and play to earn. I think that's ultimately going to be a niche market, because if the whole world transforms into metaverse, that's now looks like large, later on will be on the fringes, and not be high value. So I think my view of the metaverse is, there will be different. Maybe there will be also some of those will continue. Of course, the video game market is large, but it's not comparable to what I'm talking about, where when every organization will be in one of a few metaverses, where all the business and cultural exchanges and knowledge exchanges and education will happen. Every university, every firm, these clusters will exist. That's what I believe in, and that's a really big market, and that's what I have my eye on. But again, maybe we are working on something which I believe could be big, but it's very early days. So I would be saying, I haven't personally invested. I have my crypto portfolio, but I haven't gone into a lot of land buying in any of the metaverse projects, because it's too fresh.
I like to take my cues from the real world. Like if you go to Paris or Kyoto, like the Ryo-Enji Temple Garden, you go to these iconic spaces. You go to even Zaha Hadid's Aliyev Center in Baku. These are landmarks, IP that is truly artistic, iconic, that inspire. I think that these are the IPs, that will win in the Mars house. In the metaverse. Basically, you want to think about places that will have lasting power. And if you look at Paris, for example, or you look at Kyoto, these places, are still legendary today because of the art. And it's art and culture and inspiration that will win, not only in real life, but in the metaverse.
And utility.
Yeah, and of course, exactly. I always say beauty wins, but I think I agree as well that these are, it has to function well. It has to be satisfying as an experience. And that means you also have to get a lot of exchange, a lot of knowledge exchange, a lot of good experience, social encounters and learning experiences, all of that, what we're looking for, and maybe creators' experiences. So I do believe that's important, this functionality, and that's something which we are also in very early days yet. And so, but it's fascinating, and I do think it's important. The early adopters, they are important, and we are all enthusiasts. We are all, all entrepreneurs are overextending themselves, and we're willing to risk. We're risk takers, and that's that space is full of those, and I congratulate this. And I think a lot of them, a lot of what's being invested now is actually also crypto money. So this was good windfalls, young people if they lose
I don't know why
half
you
of
keep
the-
saying
if
young
they
people.
lose
People
half
of all
of
ages.
orders,
People of all ages.
cares?
No more ageism on this
Who
panel.
cares? You
People
know,
of all ages.
these 25 years crypto millionaires and billionaires, they can lose. They let them invest, let them pour this in, and we can
Again,
work
it's
with
people of
that.
all ages.
Yeah, but I think that cryptocurrency, it fluctuates so much, and it risingly, but it fluctuates that it almost feels like not real money in respect of investments into these projects.
It's similar there. I mean, that's a lot of this will stay, of course, and it will be real value. And I think something like the Ethereum project and ecosystem, I think is there, is very stable. I would say that's would be a relatively safe bet. But in the metaverse, we don't have that. We don't have the Ethereum brand in the metaverse yet.
I think that if sure, some of the earlier questions were around like, how do I get started? How do I get involved? What software should I learn? We answered that in real as the preeminent real-time engines right now. But I think if it's first like thinking about what is your goal, right? What is your personal goal, and then and then thinking from that point, thinking of how do I get involved? Like, am I in a learning phase? Am I trying to build an overall strategy for my company? Am I wanting to have some fun? A creative outlook and creative. Am I looking to create community? So I think depending on what it is, is it to start really becoming the preeminent digital architect. So depending on what your goal is, the steps that you might take might be somewhat different. But I would say in general, it's like, to me, the first steps are go out there, experience what is out there, have all the experience, have many experiences in all of the different virtual worlds, create, if you're a builder, or, create a virtual world in one of the existing platforms, maybe create your first NFT, or buy some NFTs. If you don't want to invest a lot, certainly this is not investment advice, and nobody here is giving anyone investment advice, but take some small actions, join some Discords, join some Twitter spaces, hear what's interesting, but and see what you gravitate to, see where your community and your audiences are gravitating to, and then start to figure out what is your strategy for your business, and look, where is that TAM? Where do you believe the business is going? Where do you believe that future is? But first, I would say, it's experiment, learn, test, and iterate, and get clear, but come in maybe with a hypothesis about what you want to learn and what you want to do, what that strategy is, and keep iterating on it as you go.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong, because that market will be so large. I can see it coming, that there will be everybody who is now joining will do well. I mean, as a designer, I'm not saying every metaverse project will succeed. So I would be cautious with investing, but investing time and energy to become a creator and
great asset
contributor to that space is going to be a very safe bet for a very good career.
Create 3D assets, absolutely.
And I also want to just talk about AR and the direction and the future of AR metaverse as an extension of our reality, and that is definitely going to be a game changer. Like, once Apple or HP or whomever comes out with a high-powered, high-fidelity AR device that's wearable, that's going to eliminate our need for these things, and we are going to have overlay of art on architecture, interplay, experiences, immersion, objects that we collect, that we will live with in our daily lives and interact with, experiences of education and lifestyle, and I mean, everything is going to be a seamless digital interface. And I'm very excited about the creative possibilities of architecture when we can actually play with it as an overlay of our real life. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It's definitely going to be a very important element, so that you experience these integrations, out in the world. And there was an interesting metaverse, I think it's called Omniscape. Robert Rice, a very, a VR veteran who is a very fantastic project. He takes the whole globe as a metaverse and replicates. You can place yourself there, but then the trick is, if you go there, you place your products there, there will be AR visible in those locations. Things like this, I believe very much into this, and you can have, I don't know. It's just curious that Google Glasses went off the market, but it had continued.
Yeah,
It continued
an
to
enterprise.
be developed, actually, not in mass market, but for corporates and so on.
Yeah,
And
it's an enterprise use case for Google Glass.
Absolutely, and there's Facebook Glasses, and there's other headsets becoming transparent. I do believe that is going to be very, very important. So all the more we love it as architects, because that means we have the physical and the virtual have to be overlaid in a lot of places.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for contributing to this fruitful discussion. I just want to address all the viewers and listeners. I'm getting a lot of questions that I just am not able to read every single one of them. But just want to tell everyone that basically this is a sort of prelude to Disrupt Symposium, which is an event happening between the 1st to the 5th of May. And Patrik, Krista, and Joanna's two friends from HP, colleagues, Barbara and Ken, will all give their keynotes. And after the keynote, we'll have also a Q&A session where we can raise all these questions. And after listening to in-depth presentations by the speakers, we'll also deep dive more into specific topics. So Patrik Schumacher will speak on the topic of the metaverse as a new opportunity for architects. Krista Kim will speak to the economy of the metaverse, property ownership and rentals. And Barbara Marshall, head of industry strategy of Z by HP, and Ken Hoke, head of industry strategy at Teradisi, will lead a two-part presentation, discussion, and workshop demo session on a topic of drive business agility and productivity in the age of hybrid work. So we are only 1 week and a half away from Disrupt. It's starting 1st of May. It's a 5-day virtual event. So if you haven't yet, go to www.disruptsymposium.com and get your tickets. There is a very affordable price given the value that we're providing and the incredible talks and presentations we will have. So thank you so much, Patrik, Joanna, and Krista. And also thank you to ArcDaily for this opportunity to stream live to their platforms and to bring these incredible speakers. And thank you for everyone who listened in.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. And if you have, it sounds like people have additional questions, so feel free to reach out. You can find me at Joanna Popper on all the different platforms. So.
That's a brilliant idea, yes. Krista is on Instagram. She's been great responding. So if you guys want to reach out to panelists, you of course can.
Yeah, I'm more on Facebook, so.
Exactly.
Twitter, anyway. Instagram, LinkedIn.
And Twitter, yeah, I'm Facebook and
Twitter. Web3 Twitter.
Exactly. Anyway, good to meet you guys. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you all. Thanks, everyone.